Hello, guys and girls, and welcome to today's mini grammar lesson. As you can see here on the screen, the topic that we're going to be talking about is active and passive voice. Now, if you have a really strong memory, you might notice that these slides look a little bit familiar, and that is because we've gone over these exact slides already once this year, but it's been a while. And I've told you guys that although we are done talking about new grammar topics, we are going to be taking some time in these few days that we have left leading up to KSA testing to review some things. And I will go ahead and tell you that I feel pretty confident that you will see active and passive voice on the KSA test. And so this is going to be a great opportunity for us to do some review today. So let's get to reviewing. Before we can really understand what active and passive voice are, there are a couple of key terms that we need to make sure we are reviewing and that we're familiar with. The first key term is subject. When I say subject, I'm talking about the part of the sentence that tells who or what the sentence is about. And then we also need to be able to identify verbs. We've talked about verbs a lot this year. We know that verbs are action words. It is the action that is performed by the subject. For example, the students studied for the test. If we're trying to identify the subject of that sentence, we're going to ask ourselves, who is this sentence about? It's underlined for us. Students is who this sentence is about. And then to identify the verb, we're going to ask ourselves, what did the students do? It's circled in this sentence. The students studied. Students is the subject. Studied is the verb because it's the action word. Our next example sentence says, Sarah wrote a story. Again, to identify the subject, we have to ask ourselves, who or what is this sentence about? This sentence is about Sarah. And then for the verb, we ask ourselves, what did Sarah do? Sarah wrote. So that is our action word. That's our verb. Now that we've gone over some of that key vocabulary, let's review what active and passive voice are. Active voice is what we typically use, and it happens when the subject of the sentence performs the action of the sentence. For example, the dog chased the cat. When you are trying to identify if a sentence is written in active or passive voice, my advice is to find the verb first, the action word in the sentence. So in this sentence, the action is chased. Then we're going to ask ourselves, who is doing the chasing? Is the dog chasing the cat, or is the cat chasing the dog? In this sentence, it's pretty clear that the dog is doing the chasing. Dog is before the verb, so the subject, dog, is performing the action, chased. And so this sentence is written in active voice. Our next example sentence says, the chef cooked the meal. Again, if I was trying to decide if this sentence is written in active or passive voice, I would find the verb first, the action word. In this sentence, the verb is cooked, and then I'm going to ask myself, who is doing the cooking? In this sentence, the person doing the cooking is the chef. Chef is before the verb, so that tells me that this sentence is written in active voice because the subject, chef, is performing the action, cooked. Passive voice is a little bit different. With passive voice, the action of the sentence is performed on the subject. So for example, the cat was chased by the dog. Again, my piece of advice is to find the verb first. In this sentence, our verb is was chased. And then we're going to ask ourselves, who is doing the chasing? Is the cat chasing or is the dog chasing? In this sentence, dog is still doing the chasing. Dog is chasing the cat. And now, instead of dog being at the beginning of the sentence, dog is at the end of the sentence. And so since the person or thing performing the action of the verb is after the verb, this sentence is written in passive voice. The meal was cooked by the chef. Again, find the verb first, was cooked. Ask yourself, who is doing the cooking? In this sentence, it is the chef. Chef is after the verb, and so it's written in passive voice. Quickly, let's go over the steps for determining if a sentence is written in active voice or passive voice, and these were just modeled for you. Number one, like I said, find the verb, find the action word. Number two, figure out who or what is performing that action. Number three, if the person or thing that is performing the action is at the beginning of the sentence, before the verb, the sentence is written in active voice. If the person or thing that is performing the action of the verb is at the end of the sentence, it's written in passive voice. Hopefully this will ring some bells for you. If you can't figure out the person or thing that is performing the action of the verb, we talked about how you can use the phrase by zombies at the end of the sentence. If you can plug in by zombies at the end of the sentence and the sentence makes sense, then you know it is written in passive voice. Next thing we need to do is talk about how to rewrite sentences in active and passive voice. In other words, if it's in active voice, how do you change it to passive voice? And if it's in passive voice, how do you change it to active voice? We have some steps for this as well. Step number 1, again, is to find the verb. And then you're going to figure out who is performing the action of the verb. That should sound very familiar because those are the same steps that you have to follow just to be able to determine if the sentence is active or passive. After you figure out who or what is performing the action, step number 3 is to move it. So if the person or thing performing the action is at the beginning of the sentence, you're going to move it to the end of the sentence. If it's at the end of the sentence, you're going to move it to the beginning of the sentence. Last but not least, the final step is to change the verb to the correct form, and we're going to look at an example of how to do that here in just a second. So let's say we had this sentence, the dog chased the ball, and we were going to rewrite that sentence in the opposite verb voice. Step number 1, just like if we were trying to determine if this sentence is active or passive, we have to find the verb. We have to find the action in the sentence. In this sentence, the verb is chased. That's the action that is happening. Step number 2, we have to determine who or what is performing the action of the verb. In other words, who is doing the chasing. Currently, the way this sentence is written, the dog is chasing the ball, and dog is at the beginning of the sentence. It is before the verb, so as it is written, this sentence is an active voice. Step number 3, if we want to rewrite this sentence from active voice to passive voice, we need to move the person or thing performing the action of the verb. We decided that the person or thing that was performing the action was the dog. It was at the beginning of the sentence, but we need to move it to the end of the sentence. So instead of having the dog chase the ball, we're going to rearrange so that it says the ball chased the dog. Now, obviously, that doesn't make a lot of sense, and so that takes us to step number 4, which is to change the verb to the correct form. So instead of putting the ball chased the dog, we would say the ball was chased by the dog. So now we've taken this sentence from active voice, the dog chased the ball, to passive voice, the ball was chased by the dog. Here's another example. The crops were damaged by the sun. Step number 1 is to find the verb. In this sentence, the verb is were damaged. Now we have to figure out who is performing that action. In other words, what is doing the damaging? In this sentence, it is the sun. Step number 3 is to move the person or thing performing the action. So as it was written originally, sun was at the end of the sentence. We're going to move it to the beginning of the sentence, which leaves us with the sun were damaged by the crops. That doesn't make a lot of sense, so step number 4 is to change the verb. We're going to drop the helping verb were, and that leaves us with damaged, and that is the sun damaged the crops. So we went from passive voice, the crops were damaged by the sun, to active voice, the sun damaged the crops. I know that this was a super quick review, but hopefully it refreshed your memory, and we're going to be doing some more practice with this as class goes on today.